question of whether the SWOT analysis, a powerful tool in strategic planning, value in navigating the complexity of today's world that arises in the ever-changing business landscape, where innovation and adaptability are critical. So moving forward, we will start our seminar with the Quranic Tilawat in the name of Allah. So I'll request my friend here to come on the stage for Quranic Tilawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم صدق الله العظيم جزاك الله.
Now I request all of you to rise for the national anthem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will now quickly move forward. I would firstly like to thank Dr. Jameel Ahmed, our program manager for MBA, for equipping us with the right possibilities to be able to conduct the seminar. MBA at SZABIST, the MBA team, the Faculty of Management Sciences, to, again, as my friend earlier mentioned, to bridge the gap between academia and the corporate world, and also for the enhancement of skills and quality education across the board. So we will first introduce our moderator, Ms. Iram Zaidi, here, who is with us, who will be moderating the session. She has over 25 years of experience with multiple freelancing and entrepreneurial experiences across the board. Then we have Ma'am Asma Balal. Dr. Mazhar Ali here as well is our co-faculty for Management Sciences and Marketing. He and Ms. Iram Zaidi today have organized this seminar for us, so we thank both of them. Next we move on to our panelist. Yeah. So Ms. Asma Bilal here is the country director for Mary Stopes Pakistan, and she is a public health enthusiast, and we'll be very forward looking to hear from her about marketing and the corporate world, especially with an NGO or Mary Stopes Pakistan as an organization.
And she's a Harvard grad as well.
Yeah, and she's a Harvard grad, so brownie points for that. My next panelist is Abdul Samad Khan. Abdul Samad Khan Saab is the CEO for Agwin Pakistan. And Agwin Pakistan works in the fertilizers industry within our industry, in the fertilizer industry of Pakistan, and we will also look forward to hearing from him. This seminar basically is a mix of people coming in from different industries to share with us how marketing and business are actually ruling and working around in the Pakistani market today with respect to the factors affecting businesses that are happening across the world. My third panelist here is Mr. Haroon. Mr. Haroon is the CEO of Farm Evo, Managing Director of Farm Evo. Farm Evo is in the pharmaceutical industry, and we are also looking forward to hear from him. Today we have one panelist who will be joining us from Lahore. He's the CEO of Tire, Mr. Khurram, and he will be on an online.
Shall we start?
Yeah, please.
Isko off kar. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible to you all? We have to connect. Thank you so much, Raisa, and thank you so much, Agamish. Okay, thank you everyone for being to be here on time. I'm really proud of you all because you were there at 6:30 p.m. sharp. So first of all, a big round of applause for the whole SZABIST. Yeah. Because you were here on time, so we started on time, though we had few internet glitches, otherwise it was perfectly good. So I'm very much thankful to all my panelists who took out their invaluable time and be part of this whole seminar. It's a learning exercise which we do every year to connect the academia and the industry. So I would like to start this whole session with a small video which was recommended by one of our panelists, Mr. Khurram Javed Maqbool, when he was working as a CMO of Fatma Fertilizers. When he left Anglo and he joined Fatma Fertilizer, he made a small video, a content. So I would like to start with that. Can you play that video, please?
या तो सब कुछ हार दूं या फिर जान की बाजी लगा दूं अपनी जमीन की खातिर। फैसला इतना मुश्किल नहीं था मेरे लिए। सब कुछ हंसी खुशी चल रहा था, लेकिन फिर से हमें डाकुओं का दौर आया और हमारे खानदान पे जैसे एक आफत आ गई। पहले मेरे भाई को मारा और फिर पापा को जाली केस में जेल हो गई। सब कुछ अब इस कमरा में बस औरतें ही तो हैं और इनका जमीन पर क्या होगा? सबकी नजर हमारी जमीन पर, लेकिन मुझे शायद ये नहीं पता था एक बढ़ते बच्चे को इतनी ग़िज़ाइयत की ज़रूरत होती है, इन सब की ग़िज़ाइयत एक
No
साथ
problem.
खिला
You can
सकती
see the
हो
power of this video that Nestle.
कि हमें ये सिखाया गया था कि एक वो तुम्हारी माँ है जिसने तुम्हें पैदा किया और दूसरी माँ है तुम्हारी ज़मीन। जल्दी अंदर जाओ, सिर्फ को बोलो संदूक से बोलिए निकालो, जल्दी जाओ। और आपको छोड़कर कौन भागता है?
चले जाओ यहाँ से। क्या लेने आए हो? मेरे भाई को मारकर भी सुकून नहीं मिला तुम्हें?
सुकून तो मुझे तब मिलेगा जब मैं अपना हक हासिल करूंगा। ये घर और ये जमीन मेरी है, इसको मैं लेके रहूंगा।
ये मकान और ये जमीन मेरे बाप दादा की मेहनत का नतीजा, और अपनी जमीन को छोड़कर भागना सिखाया नहीं गया हमें।
ये ऐसे नहीं मानेगी। चल।
So, sir, please have I thought. So, I hope I'm audible. This is a short video. We'll be sharing this link with you in the class. How it started when Fatma Fertilizer, they want to become relevant for this. For the industry, and they want to create a content for on digital space. They actually explore the kind of opportunities they have in the actual agricultural markets in the remote areas. So they actually picked up a story of Nazo, how she actually protected her family and how she actually managed to keep her values intact and अपनी property को save किया. So this content was created to give tribute to Nazo and to highlight the fact that the people living in our villages, they are as strong as the women living in the city areas. So this is a good way of giving a tribute to the women in Pakistan who are empowered no matter if they're educated or not. It just comes from the mindset. So then Fatma Fertilizer becomes a brand, strong brand we call in the minds of the consumer. And Sir Sab's Pakistan की जो campaign थी वो बहुत hit हुई, and Khurram Javed Maqbool was the pioneer, was the main man behind the whole campaign. So this is why SWOT analysis is so relevant. So I'll start my first question from Asma. Asma, how do you connect SWOT analysis in social entrepreneurship arena?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Iram, for inviting us here. Always very refreshing to be with future business leaders. I would take a step back. I think before we even get into how a social enterprise would be different from a corporate, I think it's more about the principle that in order to stay relevant in the market, every organization, whether it's a social entrepreneur, social enterprise or the for-profit sector, we need to have a good understanding of our internal and external environment. So internal environment, yes, you could use any framework. It doesn't have to be SWOT, but yes, SWOT or SOAR or, Porter's 5 forces or whatever. You want to use what is most relevant to your industry. And then the external operating context. So again, coming to the social sector, for example, we very routinely use pestles for analyzing the external environment because Mari Stopes, for example, provides maternal and child health services, reproductive health, family planning services, and these are sensitive services. In the environment where we operate, I mean, we are operating nationally, both in urban and rural areas, so there are various sociological, cultural reasons or cultural factors that are very relevant to us. So when we are designing, let's say, our marketing campaigns or our promotional strategies, we have to be very culturally relevant, culturally sensitive, socially relevant in our campaigns. And I think for that, you need to have a good understanding of the economic, technological, legal framework, the social framework where you're operating. So I guess that goes for, you know, both for-profit and social enterprises.
Same question goes to someone else. How would you like to enlighten us? How do you use SWOT analysis for you, for your businesses, and how do you apply as well the impact on the decision making here?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is my first time at SZABIST, and I'm thoroughly impressed. I must say that. You know, your question on how to apply it in a business environment or otherwise, you know, so it really depends on what you're trying to do at that point in time. So let's say if you were doing a long-term business strategy, you were trying to figure out what's going to happen to your organization or your business in the next 5 years or 10 years, then what you would do is probably look at SWOT analysis as a strategic tool. So what SWOT analysis does is that it looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In all those four, the most important probably is the external factors, okay? The threats that you're getting from the environment, from the competitors, what's going to happen in the markets, and also the opportunities that you're getting from there. Those are things that you need to somehow crystallize. It's very difficult to quantify those. You can do it through market research, okay? The opportunities and threats maybe, and try to quantify it as much as you can. And then what you can also do is study the strengths and weaknesses by maybe doing customer surveys. You know, a lot of companies do that now. They actually get input even on SMS. Banks do that on SMS, yes or no type of inputs. So if you can get together that kind of data, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and then what are the opportunities and threats, you can do a longer term analysis of what and how your business is going to look like in the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. So that, from a business perspective, is how, in my opinion, is the best use of SWOT analysis. Like, for example, in strategic marketing, that's also possible. But from a business perspective, it's very useful because it is primarily a strategic tool.
Hagum Saab, so you're working for Pharma Evo, you own Shields as well, and you're connecting with Indus Hospital as well. You're contributing to it. So how do you take in pharmaceutical industry? How does it work?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Iram, for inviting me to this interesting session, and especially seeing the young leaders, you know, sitting in this audience. And I'm happy to see people are taking notes actually of our discussion here. So it's a good sign, and I don't see people looking at the mobile phones, which is also a good sign. So thank you. So thank you for your attention. If you go back to the history, I think I was, you know, when Ms. Iram sent me a list of questions, so I told my team, you know, these are very, very theoretical questions, so you need to help me out and, you know, do some research. So they went to the research and they actually pulled out some, you know, literature on the SWOT analysis. And, you know, it's always go back and, you know, see what actually you learned in your MBA then in BBAs. So I don't know how many of you know that how SWOT was, you know, introduced, the concept of SWOT. So there's a gentleman called by the name of Albert Humphrey. He was from Stanford Institute or the university in USA, California. So he was the one who pioneered the concept of SWOT analysis in 1960. And the reason what's mentioned in the research that he brought this model for accountability and objectivity to the planning process. So the two, you know, elements which are important: accountability, you know, and objectivity. So I think every business needs SWOT analysis. It could be called business, and then in the businesses you have small units, segments. For example, a big corporation like Engros or Apples of this world will have a very large SWOT analysis of their company, and then they will have business units having their own SWOT analysis. So in my opinion, I think when you bring that accountability or the process to any business, this helps the business to grow in a strategic way, and then you make strategies based on your competitive analysis. So interestingly, when I was reading this, there was a research also mentioned in the literature, actually not very past, it was only 2023. The research said this 78% of the people who were surveyed actually think that SWOT analysis helps the businesses, which was a good sign. And there was like 15% which was completely dead against the SWOT analysis. But if you look at the hindsight, and recently we went through our own SWOT analysis. We as a family business, we hired a consultant who is helping us to formulate a family constitution for our businesses. So the first thing he wanted us to go back to your businesses and start doing the SWOT analysis. So this was kind of took me back. I said we never did that actually. We know, but putting things on the paper is something really different. So then I asked my team, let's do the SWOT analysis of our company, which we did it, and we kind of gave it to the consultant, and then he said, this is fine, but what about your competition SWOT analysis? I said, how do you do that? So he gave us a framework, and then I told my team, look at our competition or the similar business in the industry, because pharma industry is very organized. We have a lot of data in the format. So we took the top few companies and started analyzing their SWOT, and of course based on our own inputs and based on our own indications, how they, what are they doing in the market and how they are selling their products. So it's an interesting revelation which came out from all these exercises for us as a business in the pharmaceutical industry, that where you are being positioned, where industry is going, and how your competition is looking at you, or how your competition is actually moving forward in the industry. So this overall, helped us in the very recent, I'm talking about only a few weeks back, and to kind of come back to our strength, come back to focus, and see, what additional focus you can put into your business, and how can you add value to your overall processes vis-a-vis competition and vis-a-vis how the industry is behaving. So yes, it's an interesting tool, and it's difficult. It's very time consuming. The research what I read, it says a lot of people don't want to do this SWOT analysis because it's quite time taking. So, but at the end, when you do really a good job, then you really know where you are going, what are your strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you, Sabi. You opened my eyes, because this is, you're doing for family SWOT analysis for your business. This is very actually interesting.
Yes.
That which is very relevant. So if you want to grow, can we go to Lahore, or should we wait? Should we go to Lahore? When you tell me, I'll switch. So how do you connect in the SWOT with disruptive technologies in Mary Stokes? How do you apply there? Can I do it now? Can we go to Lahore?
Want to go to Lahore first? Yeah.
After last, take the permission. Should I go to Lahore? Okay. Yes. Khurram Sahab, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Give me a phone. Can you hear me, Khurram Sahab, from Lahore, from Karachi?
Hello, sir.
Smoke का क्या हाल है लाहौर में? Yes, we can hear you. Smoke का क्या हाल है? How is smoke there? अब तो मेरे पास मोबाइल नहीं है.
मेरा ख्याल है कोई मोबाइल ऑन जो है ना, या तो वो पड़ा हुआ है लैपटॉप के साथ या माइक पड़ा हुआ है, उनको जरा दूर कर लें लैपटॉप से.
Okay, till we.
आप एक काम करिए, ये जो ज़ाबिस्ट का जो है लिंक, इसको काइंडली इसका माइक ऑफ कर दें.
इसका माइक ऑफ कर दें, मेरे मोबाइल से उसको ऑफ कर दें.
ज़ाबिस्ट मीटिंग का जो माइक है इसको ऑफ कर दें.
I think so. Khuram Saab, can you hear me now?
अब अपना माइक खोलिएगा.
Okay, so I am talking to you. I think you can hear. So, so how do you use SWOT in partner fertilizer and agro? Just give you a brief experience of snapshot. फिर हम phone बंद करते हैं. आप brief थोड़ा सा दे सकते हैं अपना? I think he can't hear me. अब आपको आवाज आ रही है? Okay, we'll start. We'll continue. Till you fix it. Okay, Asma, you continue. Till you fix it.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting speaking of disruptive technologies. I think
Are you audible? आप वो ऑन करके बस इसको बंद कर दें. अगर ये बंद कर देना.
Is this working now?
Yeah.
Okay. It is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think disruptive technology or digital transformation, I mean, that's in the environment for all businesses, and any enterprise has to keep up with the developments that are happening, especially the technological developments. So, I mean, speaking specifically from a healthcare industry perspective and a service delivery organization perspective, when we did our last SWOT analysis in our strategic planning exercise, we figured that we were extremely good as a service delivery, health service delivery provider. We were very good in our technical quality. Sorry, I think it's... in clinical quality, because that's what we specialize in, that's what we take pride in. Our doctors are highly trained, we have an excellent system of quality assurance, for example. But as one of the weaknesses that was identified was that we were not very good at marketing it or reaching out to, for example, the young adults. And that directly linked with, an opportunity, which was that how are the young people accessing information? So if we want to reach out to adolescents who are just entering puberty or past puberty, young adults, and we want to cater to their needs, how do we reach out to them? Speaking of technology, we know that they are usually their source of information, their go-to medium is their mobile phones, so mobile apps, social media, Instagram, Facebook, and we were not present in any of those forums. We were using more sort of the traditional marketing approaches in terms of brochures, newspaper ads, also some below the line activities, door-to-door campaigns. But if we wanted to, especially the urban young people, if we wanted to reach out to them and give health messaging to them, we had to adapt our marketing strategy and have a social media strategy, for example. So that was one thing that came up, which was specifically relevant to, you mentioned disruptive technology. Another area is that of telehealth. I'm sure you're all aware that now telehealth is really gaining traction, and especially when during COVID, I think this idea came up where a lot of online consultations started happening. But then now the situation has gone beyond that, and there are a lot of diagnoses, a lot of treatments that are being administered remotely as well. So again, we had our brick and mortar clinics and delivering healthcare in a very traditional way. Again, as part of the SWOT analysis, we figured that in order to cater to some population segments that are far-flung, that may not have access to a physical facility, and especially when we talk about primary healthcare, there is a lot that could be delivered through telehealth. So we developed a telehealth strategy, and right now we have a team of about 7 doctors that are providing teleconsultations to far-flung areas. We are connected with the mid-tier providers. as we all know, that there's a dearth of doctors in the rural areas, for example, and mostly there are nurses, midwives, lady health visitors that are delivering care. To connect that cadre of providers, the mid-level cadre, with doctors, qualified doctors, again, was a huge value-added service to the community. So we developed a strategy around that, which did mean that we had to bring in additional resources, the human resources, and some expertise for doing that, because traditionally we did not have that. And this came out, these two examples that I'm giving related with disruptive technology, they directly came out of the last SWOT that we did. So that's what.
And you have to give me that mind. So after Samad Khan, I just want to know, sir, that fertilizer, how disruptive technology can be utilized in fertilizer industry. I mean, this is something different because we're using DAP, diammonium phosphate, और एक और भी हम यूज़ करते हैं फ्लावरिंग के लिए अमोनियम फॉस्फेट दूसरा वाला यूज़ कर रहे होते हैं, तो आपने कैसे इसमें यूज़ करते हैं disruptive technology?
You know, when it comes to disruptive technology, I think the adoption of disruptive technology in agriculture is not going to be easy anywhere in the world. Okay, so it's more difficult in Pakistan, but probably there is some use of that in, let's say, the US, where precision agriculture is being practiced. So what happens in the US is that they have these huge machines, which are harvesters, come seed drills, and they pick up crops from a certain area, and the same thing then actually has seed, which actually goes and plants, and the same thing applies fertilizer, and they know exactly which area requires what quantity of fertilizer and what type of fertilizer. Like you were saying, there's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, so they apply different kinds of fertilizers as a mix, and all of these are sort of monitored through satellite positioning system. So in, let's say, hundreds of acres of farms over there, let's say 1,000-acre farm over there, they know exactly where what was planted, how much fertilizer was applied in which 10 acres, right? That kind of technology, I'm going to speak of something else as well, but that kind of technology is very difficult to implement in Pakistan. Firstly, because we don't have 100-acre or 1,000-acre farms here. Yeah. We have small farm holders, right? So it's very difficult to do something like that in Pakistan. However, there are initiatives which have become successful, and they relate more to delivery mechanisms, or let's say information delivery mechanisms to the farmers, not the actual product delivery. Those relate to those relate to disseminating information to the farmers, for example. You have, let's say, SMS messages going out to farmers, and those are catered for to a particular area. So if in a particular area wheat is being planted, you can specify, or let's say this area will get messages about wheat sowing and what kind of fertilizers to use over there. Farmers in different areas get different messages about the weather over there. Somebody put me on this database, so I get every day Karachi ka mausam aaj aisa hoga, right? So I get those kind of things. So those kind of things, information dissemination has happened, but even there, it still needs to go to the next step. For example, about 4 years ago, we tried to get into, through another person who was actually very interested in that, and I was trying to fund it, my company was trying to fund it. We tried to get into a system where we could actually get information from the farmers of their acreage, of the crops that they were growing for that particular season, the fertilizer they were going to use, the seed they were going to use. 5 or 6 different, or let's say 7 or 8 different information points to be collected from a particular area, put on our portal, and then that information collected would be sold or monetized and sold to the banks, right? And since the banks are not very interested in giving credit directly to the farmers, they give it through the RTs or the commission agents. This would have enabled the banks to understand that Mr. X farmer and Mr. Y farmer are doing this and this, and hence if they apply for credit, they can give credit to them. The reason why it didn't work is because we were unable to monetize it, simply because the banks are not interested in that. Yeah. So if you can give credit to easily, let's say, to a commission agent or an RT, why do you need to run after the farmers? It doesn't make sense for them. So we're still kind of way behind in these kind of initiatives. I think these will happen in the next few years, and we'll be surprised when they happen. They'll happen so fast, right? That's how disruptive technology is. That's the very definition of disruptive technology. But as far as agriculture is concerned, so far there have been starts and stops, and that's where it is right now.
So I have a question from you. Arun Bhai, I just recently watched the ad of Shield in which you gave a tribute to the mother, how the mothers have sleepless nights and looking after the babies and the Shield products. We actually discussed this whole ad in our class as well. So, and the way, and the small things you have captured in that advertisement, कि माँ जब बच्चा रोता है उसको चप्पल पहनने की भी हिम्मत नहीं होती, वो भाग रही होती है, फिर मतलब, and you didn't show the face of the mother, आपने वो सारी एक 24 hours में एक माँ की जो responsibilities आपने दिखाई हैं. अब आपकी जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, शील्ड है, फार्मा वो है, आप डिस्ट्रप्टिव टेक्नोलॉजी से किस तरह से अपने आप को डिफ्रेंशिएट करते हैं एक लोकल फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनी को मल्टीनेशनल जैसे ग्लैक्सोस है, स्मिथ क्लाइन बीचम है और उसी कंपनीज, आप कैसे अपने आप को डिफ्रेंशिएट करते हैं और आप तो कैसे रेलिवेंट आप अपने आप को इंडस्ट्री में करते हैं?
Interesting question. Let me take you, all of you, थोड़ा मेरा साथ दें. Let's go to 2030. We are in 2023. So let's go forward 7 years. You are sleeping in your bed in, say you are in London. You wake up at like 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. And by the time you wake up, you have biochips in your mind. Biochip आपके जो breakfast area है उसको alarm देता है कि you have woken up and breakfast is getting ready. By the time you start dressing up, तो आपके कपड़े में एक chip लगी हुई है that gives you the message कि your car which is going to take you to the airport is just coming in like 5 minutes. So you get onto a flight from London to Shanghai, which is a suborbital flight, which is a 4 hours flight from London to Shanghai. By the way, if you know, I don't know how many were born in when the Concorde was flying from London to New York in 4 hours. So you would have a breakfast in London, a lunch in New York, and then come back to London late night. So it's not that far. I'm talking about London to Shanghai. So you're on a suborbital flight, 4 hours to Shanghai. During the flight, you have a holo conference to your Brazilian colleague for a new project, and you have concluded that meeting. You go land into Shanghai, have a one-to-one meeting with your client, and then you fly back to London at the dinner time with your spouse. That's what the future is. That's what the disruption technology is going to be. So it's not far. I'm just talking about 7 years. It may happen earlier. Another statistics I'm going to share with you, which probably would shock you. So be shocked, but understand that it's a research-based data that I'm sharing with you. And I came across that research when I was doing a presentation on precision medicine, very targeted medicine. So 50% of the medicine don't work on the 50% of the population. 50% of the medicine don't work on the 50% of the population. So if you're taking an antibiotic, it's not necessary that antibiotic will work on me as it worked on you. So for example, my mother is a diabetic patient, my brother is a diabetic patient, I have many, family. There are at least 3-4 people I know who cannot take metformin, which is a very, very basic drug for a diabetic patient. So a lot of disruption is happening at the moment. Ms. Asma mentioned about telehealth. When COVID happened, of course, the healthcare professionals got the advantage of this telehealth and telecommunication. And I was pleasantly surprised when I called Aga Khan Hospital to take an appointment with the orthopedic surgeon. And Aga Khan said that, we don't have any appointment because he's lined up for 1 month. But they said, would you mind, would you be happy to take a telehealth consultation with the doctor? And I was pleasantly surprised. Aga Khan Hospital, which is, a huge hospital, so they are talking about telehealth. So this is the disruption which is happening already in the healthcare segment. Healthcare is always a slow learner of the disruption technology. So when I mentioned about the precision medicines, the drug development is using huge technology in the global markets. And the companies like Pfizer and Merck Sharp Dohmes and Novartis are using precision technology to develop the drugs, because as I said, 50% of the drugs don't work on the 50% of the people. So it's very important for the pharmaceutical industry to start on the technology and the disruption. So COVID vaccine, we all know, was a breakthrough in the pharma industry, in the pharmaceutical industry development. It was developed in the record time in the ever history of the pharmaceutical industry. We can debate about it, whether it was right or wrong. You know, there's a lot of controversy going on in the social media. But at the end of the day, this was a miracle which happened, which saved a lot of lives in the pharmaceutical industry. So yes, there's a huge potential of disruption technology, whether it's a consumer product or whether it's a pharma product. Pharma is a slow learner because a lot of regulations are involved in this, and we have to be very careful what we put it on social media and how do we disrupt the social media. But on the consumer side, yeah, there's a huge potential, and every company is learning. So for example, we recently in the pharma industry, in our company, launched the e-commerce platform of our own company. Shield, which Ms. Iram mentioned, we already had our own e-commerce platform 3 years back. So can you imagine just, it took us, the pharma company, of the same MD of both the companies, it took us 3 years to implement the same e-commerce in our own company, in difference between the pharmaceutical and the consumer. So it is a huge potential in the technology.
Okay, I'll start from you. Given the situations in Gaza and Ukraine and Russian war, such sort of unprecedented events, I think we have never thought about that this would happen in this particular year. So do you think SWOT analysis or any kind of strategic tool that we use to predict the future sales, the future manufacturing data, does it has any relevance with this if we plan ahead a bit to mitigate the risk coming through it? Because Russia की जो Ukraine war हमारी जो dollar rate पे, exchange rate पे बहुत उसका असर आया, petrol prices went up, LNG prices went up. Now Gaza की जो war है उससे भी एक बहुत बड़ा question आ रहा है कि is it coming to our neighbors Iran, Afghanistan? So do you have any sort of because you are in the pharmaceutical domain and we'll be needing products coming through you to help them. So any sort of plan?
Yes, there's, Asma mentioned in the initial discussion that there is a pest analysis, political, environment, social, technology, and this is a huge, portion. So yes, all these global, turmoils are to be, not to be predicted, but you need to sort out how your supply chain will behave. For example, COVID, had a huge, when the COVID was over, there was a huge backlog in supply chain. You just remember or imagine, a container to be shipped from Pakistan to US used to cost, I think, $10,000 or $15,000, which was a normal, rate was like $2,000 or $3,000. So how do you predict or forecast this change in the supply chain thing? So for example, if I'm buying a raw material, for example, plastic, from, which comes out of oil. So if the oil prices are going to go up, this war which is happening, I need to do a predictive model. If the oil prices go to let's say $150, what will be the price of the plastics, the raw material that comes out of the oil? So these are the challenges that as an organization you need to continuously face. For example, just from $125 to a rupee-dollar parity, we are sitting at 300 rupees. In how many years? 2.5 years, 2 years? It's huge. I mean, who would predict that, from 125 to 300? So how do you project this into your, supply chain, into your costing, into your business thing? Then, but you have to do all this analysis and to see how you will forecast and how will you put this into your systems.
So it means it is unprecedented, was unplanned. So it is difficult for the companies as well to plan accordingly. This is what I have gauged.
It's difficult, but then you need to have a hindsight, because if the war is happening and you're not forecasting that the oil will, go high or go low. So this is something you need to, forecast, because COVID was there. We all knew the China is closed down, India is not producing, your factories are shut down.
Yeah.
How would you source?
Yeah.
For example, when dollar crisis happened in Pakistan, so how would you forecast your supply chain, And this what we did, we immediately started buying extra for raw materials to continue our production. And now Right now, as we speak, we have 5 months of stock level of our raw materials, because it's important. If I don't have the stock, how would I run the factory? In other companies, I have a low stock because I know there is a good supply chain, coming along. So we need to forecast and predict, and of course use the hindsight, look at the literature, look at what's happening in the global markets, and then you do a better forecasting and better planning of your own supply chain and everything then.
So Abdul Samad Sahab, before I ask you this question, so now students, that all these predictive tools, models, Stata, E-views, these are very relevant. When you say that teachers में SPSS में डाल देती हैं, Stata करवा रही होते हैं, फिर modeling करवाते हैं, तो now it's so relevant because now you see he has to put different scenarios. What if scenario का जो advanced Excel sheet में होता है ना, वो रख के आप मुख्तलिफ predictive models को predict करते हैं and then you to interpret. So I'm sure you're purchasing the raw material accordingly, the prices you are putting up, the kind of amount of quantity you're getting, from which country you can get, everything is coming in that decision making, decision tree ke andar aata hoga. Same goes question from you. The same war, and now particularly when Afghans are going back to their country, we have a shortage of labor coming up in many cases. Like today I was asking my guard ke kachra wali gaadi nahi aayi, to wo has ke kehta hai Afghan to chale gaye, to main kaha Afghan wo to DHA ki apni gaadi aati hai na. I mean, I got that statement in the morning. So how do you predict that fertilizer being exported to Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan? Because I was reading somewhere we do export and fertilizer. So how do you predict with that?
Since you're all MBA students, so you must have heard of Black Swan events, right? Okay.
Black Swan, yeah.
So COVID was a typical classic Black Swan event, right? Is there any way to predict it? Absolutely not, right? So if you cannot predict a Black Swan event, and if you, let's say, cannot predict something like COVID, how do you cope with that then? What happens then, right? So I'm a great fan of the SWOT model, and if you're doing, let's say, strategic marketing management, you would probably use Porter's 5 with it,
Yes.
not against it. No, it's not if or, either or. It's you're going to use both, right? So I'm a great fan of SWOT or any other model, but you simply cannot use any models for a Black Swan event, right? So it's simply not possible to predict those. Now, having said that, if you cannot predict such disruptions in the environment or in the market, then what do you do as a business? So what you can do is look at some of the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals, or let's say, what are the fundamental requirements of a growing population? It's food, it's medicines, it's fuel, and anything connected with those. Okay? So if you're in a business which is connected to the essential basic requirements of a population which is growing, then you're in the right space. Okay? So my own field, I mean, fertilizer is connected with food, right? So what happened when that Black Swan event came up, let's say in 2020, is that, for example, the price of DAP fertilizer was somewhere around, let's say, $400 a ton. It went up to $1,200 a ton in 2022, and from there it has come down to about $600 a ton. So anybody who was holding inventory at that time made a lot of money, and if they were still holding inventory, they lost a lot of money as well. So it's almost impossible to predict what will happen. So I think the right strategy for managing businesses in an environment like today's, where there is, I don't know if there's going to be another Black Swan event like COVID, but we do have wars, we have conflict in the area. So if you're going to manage your business in an environment like this, probably the best thing to do is be in a business which is going to be connected to the basic requirements of the population. And more times than not, you will win out.
So there must be a contingency plan for every organization. Like, you may be predicting that India-Pakistan war probably, but this time India-Pakistan war may not happen. But we are having another turmoil coming through Afghanistan, Iran, and if Israel like to invade Iran, because today they have blamed them that Iran has besieged a vessel in the Red Sea area. So we are expecting some sort of a political turmoil. So do you have any sort of contingency for such unforeseen events, or you keep some 20%, 30% of your inventory for that particular event to happen?
Well, if you can, in an environment like this, like Mr. Harun Qasim said, if you can hold inventory, that's a great idea, if it's possible to do that. But if the prices are volatile and if you're holding inventory, it's again going to be very difficult. So you just try and predict the next 3-4 months and see what's going to happen in that.
Yes, Anand Saab, if you like to add to it.
So taking forward Samar's discussion, I think it depends on the industry, as you rightly mentioned. The pharma industry is consistent. The prices, is very stable. So your question of India-Pakistan war is specifically for pharma industry, because globally there are 2 countries in the world which supply the pharmaceutical raw materials, is India and China. So what happens if we go into a war with India? Where do we get the raw materials? China. So what we have done in the industry, not us only, the entire industry of the big players, for every raw material we have 3 sources. So we actually validate the 3 sources. We always, I have 3 sources on my as a backup plan. So I buy raw material of a certain molecule on a consistent basis from one source. So what happened when India-Pakistan war, thing happened, and this happened only 3 years ago, there was a ban by the government of Pakistan that no pharmaceutical raw material or nothing will be imported from India. So one fine morning we wake up, the entire pharma industry woke up, and there was a circular from the government of Pakistan that nothing can be imported from India. So just imagine what pharma industry had to go through this. Of course, it's a business. At the end of the day, patient lives matter. So we immediately went to the government and said, you one fine morning you said that nothing can be imported from India, then how do the industry will survive? So after a lot of discussion and with the Commerce Ministry, they realized the mistake that they made, that one fine morning somebody wakes up as a bureaucrat and just said that, thank you very much, nothing to be imported from India. So what we learned out of that, this hardship, as an industry, we learned that, if we cannot buy anything from India, then where do we go? There's only one country. Or maximum you can go to Iran, because they have some raw materials. Worse, you can go to Korea, but that is very expensive. So the globally pharmaceutical raw materials have been positioned from India and China. So eventually the industry started shifting to China. So what we did, almost 65 to 70% of our raw materials are coming from China, and then we have a backup source from India. And also from time to time, depending on the quality parameters, we have a validated process where we buy from India as well as from China. So this is learning that what we achieved during the process, these wars. India, Pakistan, I hope it doesn't happen, but then that's the real life that we are looking at it.
And so how?
If I may just add to, sorry for
please,
this,
it's
just build on what
so
Harun just
interesting,
said.
honestly.
I think if I can just crystallize what you said, it is building linkages which is important. Okay, so if you're a business and you have buyers and suppliers, build multiple linkages. If you're a country, build multiple linkages. Unidimensional strategies never work.
Okay, Asma, if you can contribute to
I
it.
would just like to add to what has already been said. So I think in a fast-changing environment, the fast-paced world that we are in, whether it's disruptive technology or it's conflict, disaster, or climate change, for example. I do want to bring in climate change because Pakistan is among the worst affected countries by climate change, and just last year we had these unprecedented floods. So I think in our strategic planning, regardless of the analysis being used, contingency planning and resilience. Resilience is something, management resilience of your business model, your procurement strategy, that is something that we are actively monitoring and looking at. And for example, when we had the unprecedented floods and more than 90% of, more than 1,000 facilities in Sindh were affected, healthcare facilities I'm talking about. It was very difficult to provide healthcare to these communities that were affected by floods. And the infrastructure was very badly destroyed. So the way we responded to this calamity was that we redeputed our mobile vans that were fully equipped vans that provide all the services inside the van, including normal deliveries. And we redeputed those to these flood affected districts. And there we very quickly we set up these safe spaces where, you know, it was kind of like a tent city, where we would have a designated tent for primary education, a designated tent for antenatal care for women's health, and then another tent clinic for other for males, for example. So we were able to depute these 15 vans in Sindh in the flood affected areas and provide these mobile services and provide them around the clock by having a shift system. So I think in our service delivery model, we had these vans that were doing community mobilization in far-flung areas, but then we were able to depute those, to mobilize the vans to depute them in the flood-affected area. So that was, I think, part of our resilience. And now in any strategic planning exercise, for example, when we do ours, climate resilience is one thing that we are actively looking at. But then again, as it was mentioned, it's about the fundamentals. So long as you have your fundamentals right, whether it's the procurement strategy, whether it's your inventory holding days, you know, for example, we have figured that in order to provide critical services, life-saving services for women, these XYZ number of medicines have to be in stock for at least a year, depending on their expiries and stuff. So similarly, I do want to pick up on a point regarding India, import ban from India, which caused a state of panic across the country. And because we are working in reproductive health, we import most of our contraceptive methods from India. And a long-acting reversible contraceptive method, an intrauterine device, it is imported from India. And initially, it was not included in the essential essential drug list that was subsequently allowed to be imported. This caused a contraceptive shortage, contraceptive insecurity in the country. And there were clinics throughout Pakistan that did not have this contraceptive. Again, I think it comes back to the resilience of your strategy. We mobilized all the resources to engage in advocacy at the relevant forums, and we got the IUD included in the essential items that could be imported from India. So again, I think it's all part of, I think the success of your strategy would depend on how rapidly you can respond to an unforeseen situation, like a black swan, for example.
Yes, Harun bhai, please.
I just wanted to add on to what Asma mentioned, you know, how rapidly you can, you know, put your team on the challenge. For example, we're talking about COVID. I still remember on March 23rd, which is a holiday, to 2020. And then I think a notification came that the government said, you know, everybody stays at home, that's a complete lockdown. So as a company, you know, because in the pharmaceutical industry, we realized that, you know, we need to continue supplying the drugs to the patients. But the government initially said, no, everything will be closed down. So I pulled my team on the factory, you know, and then we decided on a call, it was a holiday because of 23rd March. I said 23rd March is the last day because 24th of March, they said everything is locked down. So during that evening, we mobilized the entire factory, you know, we brought people from their homes to the factory and started making sure that they have the food, that they have the sleeping arrangements within few hours. And, you know, this was a teamwork. I was at home, the team was at home, but we mobilized the entire company to make sure that 24th morning we are in production. That was the challenge that we had. So the only thing we were worried, the 24th of March 2020 at 8 a.m. in the morning, the factory should run. That was the goal. And alhamdulillah, the team, as Asma mentioned, how rapidly the team is ready to take that challenge. And eventually the government came out that no, pharma industry is an essential industry. Then we were at ease, you know, to function our operations. And we continuously worked during the COVID entire, you know, 2.5 years, we never shut down. Not a single day of our factory was shut down. Not a single day of our sales and operations was shut down because we were in the life-saving thing, and it was important for us to continuously supply to the medicine to the patient. Similarly, one of our family businesses, the distribution operations, which we supply the pharmaceutical products of many other companies and the consumer products, they were allowed to open. So everyone was working, you know, 24/7 during the COVID as well. So this is the resilience of the team, how you mobilize and how you work along with the team. So this is the challenge that on the spot, how do you address that thing for any eventuality that happens?
I just want to add the beauty of panel discussion. Whatever questions we have actually prepared to ask, all are answered. That because you see, there's the beauty of panel discussion. The last question was about employee engagement. So you actually answered that question. So I would put that question. I mean, do you think by doing letting people working from home actually enhances your productivity of your organization? Then we come to ask mine the end.
So I'm still debating this question.
Okay.
On my, on my brain, and
I deliberately asked this.
I'm not a great fan of myself. I can't work at home because, of course, there are so many disruptions happening at home. So it's difficult for me to work out of home. But then, there are people who can work from home. So I think it's personal priorities. The people, and it was one of the challenges that the disruption is happening. And I was reading this research, and I took you to 2030. So this is what's going to happen. Work flexibility is going to happen. Is whatever, even if I don't like it, it's going to happen. So my liking or liking doesn't matter. I have to have a team who is resilient, who is on the job, who is on the call, who can answer the problem or the solution that I want to address it. So if it happens, it doesn't matter whether I'm living in London or sitting in a plane. I was flying out of London only a month ago. The flight got delayed. I was supposed to be on a Zoom call with a multinational company. I regretted that I can't be because I already have a flight. But the flight got delayed. Then I was on the phone sitting in the plane, and I had a call with this company. So it doesn't matter where I'm sitting. So personally, I'm not very happy about it. But my liking doesn't happen or doesn't matter anymore.
On a lighter note, I may ask Zora, would she like it or not as well? Okay, so sir, what is your opinion about it?
I think it has developed a lot since it first started in 2020. I think when it started in 2020, there was a lot of problems, so especially with employees who were at the junior most level, and I think उस level पे probably engagement आमतौर से organizations में इतनी अच्छी नहीं होती है, so it became very difficult at those levels to make sure that people were actually able to work. It's not that they didn't want to work, it's that just working at home is a very, very difficult thing for some people, right? You don't get the right environment, you can't find that extra corner where you have to sit down and at peace and quiet and you can work. So I think now the way this work from home culture is developed, all over the world it's very much advanced, but in Pakistan also it's developed a lot. I think it's an option that you must give to employees. But having said that, again, my preference is similar, because when you're conducting any meeting or when you're conducting any business or you're meeting any supplier, any buyer, or you're meeting your employees for anything, it's always better to meet face to face. A Zoom call is never the replacement for an actual face to face meeting. लेकिन सबके पास option होना चाहिए. That's my belief.
So you think, I mean, it gives more motivation for employees to connect if they are not feeling well, they are physically disabled, or they have some urgencies. So it really helps the organization as well.
It honestly works both ways.
Okay.
Because somebody is not well, they might as well take the day off.
Yeah.
Instead of working on.
Yeah, but sometimes work is work. Yeah.
So it works both ways.
So you talked about Sehat Kahani, right? You must have heard about Sehat Kahani, that lady who was looking after that project. And Mary Stopes is working on health essentials of the female and male both. So you think employees do connect with the organization even though in social sector you are not working online, you're working from home or at physically. So how do you manage?
So I think just going back to, well, we were talking about disruptive technology, but I would say a disruptive development. Whether we like it or not, a hybrid working approach, online working is here to stay. And we just were shown a picture of the future. So I think it's very much going to be there. I would